What's going on, everybody? Adam Avin back on this episode of Make Your Point. Obviously, last night the NBA Finals ended Game 5, and the Miami Heat fell to the Denver Nuggets 4-1 in the 2023 NBA Finals. And to talk about it with me, bringing on co-host, my man Zach Roisman, former water polo varsity goalie. Throw a little throwback there, Zach. It's good to have you back.
Thank you. I'm glad to be back.
And I know that we've obviously talked about everything that's had to go on with these finals and with the Heat, off screen and with all of our friends. And I think the hardest part for me when I look at the journey that this team has been on this postseason has really just been the fact that they've gone through so much this year with injuries and overcoming the odds and beating the best teams in basketball and going toe to toe with them. And to get to this point, it's definitely bittersweet because you want them to just overcome the hump just a little bit so they can lift that Larry O'Brien trophy. But even though it hurts, I don't want to take away from the journey it took for them to get there. What is this run that they've been on this postseason meant to you as you've seen this team and followed this team all season and really for the past 4 years since Jimmy's joined the club?
I mean, it's a lot of having to, as a Heat fan, a lot of having to tell people things that they don't believe about this team. Definitely a lot of, I go to school in Boston, so I'm talking to a lot of Celtics fans, a lot of
Mm-hmm.
fans of all these other teams in the East, and none of them really were viewing the Heat as true contenders. And I would kind of toss their name into these conversations and get a little bit laughed out. And obviously, nobody's laughing now, but it definitely shows people that the regular season is relatively meaningless, to an extent, of course. But for this Heat team, despite their regular season struggles, they made it all the way. So I think it's good for us.
I mean, it's not just even the disrespect that we get from our
Mhm.
friends at school or in the community. It's the national media too.
Absolutely.
No one expected the Heat to be here, and it's been their motto. We don't give a damn. They don't care. They don't care what anyone has to say, and it shows to the culture and the mentality that they have in that locker room and in that organization. And it starts all the way at the top with Pat Riley down to Spo and down to everyone in the locker room, all the players and stuff. But there's one player who's not going to be with the Heat next year. That's Udonis Haslem. Obviously, been with the Heat 20 years.
Yeah.
I feel so much more for this final, specifically for the fact that they get there. It's his last season, 43 years old, and Spoelstra's there with him, and they can't get the job done. So obviously bittersweet. It was a great run, great job this postseason. A lot of positive stuff we saw from the Heat, but most importantly, thank you, UD. We appreciate you. Your jersey's going to be in the rafters, and hopefully we can all go to a game and see that jersey hanging up there one day. But talking about the Heat, against the Denver Nuggets, that is actually a little easier for me to talk about because the Denver Nuggets were so good. And it
Mhm.
wasn't like, the Celtics or the Knicks or the Bucks where it's East rivals and fans talking crap back and forth
Yeah.
and you hate it and it just makes you upset. This Nuggets team, as much as you wanted the Heat to beat them, I know I felt this way, and I think you felt this way too. Where like there's a lot of respect there,
Oh,
because
absolutely.
even they've been the best team or one of the best teams in the Western Conference pretty much for the past 4 years as well, and they
Mhm.
haven't gotten the respect they deserve at all. I mean, they've had early exits in the postseasons. The Heat did a couple years ago as well in the first round.
Yeah.
But the Nuggets got to the same point that the Heat did, and have been consistently one of the best teams and continue to get disrespected. So the Denver Nuggets are finals champions, and
Yeah.
a lot of respect there for them. What did you see from the Denver Nuggets, and obviously specifically Nikola Jokic in this finals? What did you think of their run this postseason and the team that they've shaped up to be?
I mean, it is incredible, and you said it very well that this is a team that's been disrespected, and I would say just like the Miami Heat, this is a team that didn't quite get that respect until the bubble, even. And I'm sure we can remember Jamal Murray dropping those 50-point games in the bubble. And it seems like a lot of people forgot. A lot of people seem to be under the impression that the bubble was a fluke for both that team and for the Heat. And so now for them to make it go all the way, obviously with Jamal Murray, having dealt with the injuries that he has dealt with to make this comeback is incredible. It always sucks to see your team lose, but if anybody's gonna beat us, I'm happy that it was them. Have that second round draft pick in Nikola Jokic, and he is just. I think if anybody
He
had a
made me he made me believe that he's the best player in basketball, and
that's
it's
what I
not
was.
even it's not even for the fact that like, I didn't know he was that good. It was like, there are so many other bigger names and players that are flashier, and
Right.
when you see Nikola Jokic, flashy doesn't matter. He's just dominant. Like
Yeah,
Bam Adebayo.
absolutely.
Bam Adebayo is clearly, after this postseason, has I believed this before, but now I'm sticking to it. I will not move from this position that at 25 years old, he's the best defender in basketball, and
Mhm.
he limits every star on every team. He can guard 1 through 5. It's unbelievable what he can do on defense. And he did everything that he could do to stop Nikola Jokic and was
Yeah.
still giving up triple doubles. Nikola Jokic is the best one-on-one player in basketball, and
Yeah.
he's pretty much unstoppable on offense. So, I
Oh,
mean,
absolutely.
it's just insane to watch, and I got so upset. But you can't even be that upset at the end
You
of the day
can't.
because you're like, we did everything, we could to
At
stop
the
it.
end of the day, the defensive what you're trying to do on defense with Nikola Jokic is not even to stop him because he's going to go out and drop, 30 and he's going to have all these assists. He's going to be a central part of the team. You got to focus on Jamal Murray. And we did the best we could. And
Right.
I think that yes, it was a gentleman's sweep, 4-1, but at the end of the day, the Heat did not come into these playoffs as contenders, and the Nuggets did. And
Yeah.
so there was a little bit of a lopsided matchup there, and the Nuggets are just that good. They just have it's so difficult to when you have Nikola Jokic who you just can't stop, to then that
Right.
they have the second guy who's able to drop as many points as Jamal Murray is. And then the role players obviously really stepped it up with Christian Brown and Bruce Brown, and KCP played pretty well.
Yeah.
I think it's really they played the most well-rounded basketball of any team this year, in this
Totally.
playoffs, and they deserve the championship to that end. I don't know who would have beat them. Obviously,
Right.
they had their way with teams in the West on their way to the
Mhm.
finals, so you can't be mad at losing to that, really.
Right. And I mean, you look at what the Heat were able to do specifically on defense. They held the Heat sorry, they held the Nuggets to I think 10 or more points of what their normal average has been this postseason. So the
Yeah,
Heat's defense was very good. They just forgot how to shoot. And they kind of went back to how they were during the regular season, and kind of strayed away from the team they've been in the whole playoffs. Pretty much until game 4 against the Celtics, the Heat were shooting incredibly well. Obviously, they
yeah,
shot lights out in the Bucks series, and then those first 3 games of the Celtics, I think they were shooting like 60% from the field, like 50% from three, and then that just all kind of went out the window. And the thing that was frustrating me the most with the Heat was that the Nuggets weren't going really deep into their rotation. They were going 6, 7, 8 guys deep.
right.
Jeff Green, Christian Brown, Bruce Brown, bring really the only guys coming off the bench for the Nuggets, and they were really
Mhm.
sticking to their core rotation of guys. And if it wasn't one guy one night, it was another guy that was stepping up. And like you said, so well rounded. But the Heat also have those moments this postseason where it was a next man up mentality, where someone would step up and take the reins and really make their impact on the game. And it just seemed in this series against the Nuggets that it was Bam and no one else.
Yeah,
And Bam was doing it all. And I think the Nuggets realize, like, oh, we can stop everyone else because they're not making shots right now. So let's just let Bam take 25, 30 shots. We know he's not going to make all of them.
right.
But, if he's going to be the leading scorer, we'll let that be. And I think, that it was sad to see all those guys who have been so consistent and so important and dominant for the Heat throughout the postseason to just kind of show no signs of life in this NBA Finals. I mean, Gabe Vincent, Max Strus, just guys who have been really good this postseason and shooting the ball, shooting lights out. Gabe especially just kind of be non-existent, and it
Right.
speaks to the toughness that Denver has. And I hope that the Heat are able to overcome this in the future because they showed that with this group they can get there, and people were doubting that, obviously.
Right. I mean, I think what something that definitely plays a role is everyone likes to call attention to the undrafted players, the undrafted
Yeah.
players. Well, these undrafted players really don't have experience at this level. And while we do have Kyle Lowry, we do have Kevin Love, who are there and have been in these NBA final situations before, the people that we're relying on have just not been at this in this situation before. And it is a big ask. And I
Even
know
even
that
4 years
it's
ago, even 4 years ago, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but even 4 years
that's
ago
okay.
in the bubble, when we were going up against the Lakers, Gabe Vincent and Strus did not have the roles, and even
Right.
barely Duncan had the same role that they had this
Absolutely. And
postseason, and the
Hero
person
isn't
they've turned it to be.
and Hero who did, have a pretty important role in that series not playing. And
Well, what are your thoughts about that? So Hero obviously out, gets hurt game one of the Bucks series in the first round. We end up beating Milwaukee, and then we go the rest of the postseason without Tyler Hero. He gets finally cleared for game five, an elimination game, and Eric Spoelstra plays him a total of 0 minutes. Do you think that he should have gotten on the floor a little bit? Do you think that'd give them another spark? Were you disappointed to not see him play, or did you think that was the right decision?
I was disappointed. Yes, disappointed because I like him, disappointed because I wanted to see him, disappointed because I did think that he could provide that kind of spark plug role, get in, make a shot, make two shots, get hot. But at the end of the day, we're talking about someone who hasn't played in a while. This is someone who's coming off of injury, and even though he is back and was listed as available, that doesn't mean that he's truly available. And so I do understand what Spoelstra is doing, not playing him, because he is to an extent dusty. He has been just watching, and so I understand why you wouldn't take someone who's been out for 8 weeks or however long it's been and toss him right back into the fire. And it's a risk
Well,
he
I
did
mean,
not.
let me tell you though, when I saw Cody Zeller step out on the floor for those 15 seconds instead of Tyler Hero, I lost my mind. I know I showed you this and showed all our friends this in a group chat. My favorite and probably least favorite stat of the night last night from Game Five was that Cody Zeller was -5 in his time on the floor, and the Heat lost by 5 points, which means in the 15 seconds that Cody Zeller stepped on the floor to start the fourth quarter. Don't know why you put Cody Zeller to start the fourth quarter. You go down by 5 right away, and there's the game. So who knows? Maybe you keep Kevin Love in as backup 5, who played really well to start the third, and then maybe that game ends up a little differently, and you don't have kind of the hysterics that are going on at the end with all those crazy chucked up threes and things trying to
Yeah.
retake the lead. But I mean, hey, you got to do what you got to do. Have all the faith in Eric Spoelstra, even though wasn't particularly a fan of some of the rotational decisions that were being made, especially in the finals, just because, just matchup wise and how tight the Nuggets rotation is. You want to keep the kind of the Heat's guys attached to some of those players. Like when Bam is off the floor and Jokic is on the floor, that's an instant turn. And
Right.
when Bam is off the floor and Jokic is off the floor, that's when you have to take advantage. And it seemed
Right.
like they'd put Cody Zeller in at those moments, and then you lose that advantage.
Yeah.
And it's not to take any. I've said this before. It's not to take anything away from Cody Zeller because he's an experienced player. He was a high draft pick. He's been in the league a long time. But in this Heat offense, you got to push the ball and you rely on threes. And when you have a guy who's not a ball handler sitting at the 3-point line, just trying to do the handoff thing, at least Bam can do that and dribble and get
Yeah.
off and play make. It just did not work. And he's a free agent. We'll see what happens. I think those 15 seconds he played were really detrimental in last night's game.
Yeah.
I think they were detrimental the whole series. I mean, we were screaming the Zeller minutes, the Zeller minutes. But speaking of, what's going to happen this offseason, obviously I mentioned he's a free agent. This team has run it back a few years in a row now.
Mhm.
And before we wrap up here, I just want to ask you. Obviously, there's been rumors, with particular players over the past few seasons, specifically with this group of guys, with Jimmy and Bam, with Hero. Who's going to be that extra piece? Who can they trade to bring in another superstar to help Jimmy and Bam? They're one piece away. They're one piece away. We've heard names like Bradley Beal and and Giannis even at some points before he re-signed his supermax. And then the other day, it's Damian Lillard who goes on a Showtime podcast and says and gets asked, about all these rumors. Your time in Portland might be ending. Where could you end up? And he goes, Miami, obviously. Miami's the choice. Bam's my dog, right? So now Damian Lillard spreading that out there, and he's a guy who's potentially being vocal about the fact that the Trailblazers want to go into a rebuild direction, and he wants to get on the train and win a championship. When you look at what Pat Riley and Spo and the Heat have to do this offseason, who's the guy you're looking at? Is it Damian Lillard, who can come in and be the guy who gets his team over the hump? Who are you looking at this offseason for the Heat to bring in?
To me, a big part of who you bring is who wants to be there. And the fact that Damian Lillard has expressed that he wants to come to Miami, to me, that's huge. Him wanting to be here, wanting to come to Miami and bring a championship to this Miami team, I think is huge. And I think it's a play that you have to make, a play that you need to get Damian Lillard. Obviously, he's expensive and we don't have that much room, but in a team that just made it all the way to the finals, but clearly was outmatched in the finals, when you have an opportunity like Damian Lillard, someone who has at points been the best at his position in the world, you got to go for it. And I do really think that what he can bring to this team is really incredible, especially when you have shooters like we have that to an extent rely on other players for the shot creation.
Right.
Someone like Duncan Robinson, who, nothing against Duncan Robinson, but he's way better off the pick. Damian Lillard is a player who can create his own shots and make his own shots, and that would be huge for this team. He's not the only player, though, that we're looking at. We're obviously already not a very big team. We talk about Cody Zeller. What is Cody Zeller's role on this team? Was really just to be another big body. His contract was tiny, just about getting another big man on the court. So bringing in someone like Damian Lillard, you really can't give up any size. When you're doing that, you need to give away somewhat a smaller player, a Strus or a Lowry, and it's something that I do support. Obviously, it's a hard decision and who you are going to give up, because I would hate to see a player like Strus go. Our team has so much character, and since these guys have been there, been undrafted, the fan base is, I'm sure, very attached to a lot of these players, and the team is very attached to a lot of these
hard.
players.
It's hard. This team is so tight, and they love the Heat culture, and to see one of them go would be tough. But the piece that sticks out to me the most is Tyler Hero, because right now there have been times this postseason in a loss or when we've gone down and had to crawl back and been in these clutch games again, and even in this finals where we were waiting to see, is Tyler Hero going to come back? Is he going to be available? And I was just sitting there thinking, I miss him. I wish he was on the floor right now. And that's because even though he's definitely had games where he hasn't shot the ball well, he's going to finish with 20 points. Right. And Max Strus and Gabe Vincent, no matter how efficient they've been this postseason in scoring the ball, specifically from three, we cannot afford to have games in an NBA Finals where these guys are combined 1 of 16 for 3 points. That can't happen. And Strus had 2 games this series with 0 points. And Tyler Hero, I'm not saying that, he would have been extremely better coming off a 2-month hiatus, but he would have come in and I feel like at least tried to make some of those same shots, and maybe some of those fall against those of Strus's that didn't. So for me, Tyler Hero is an important piece that I think you need to keep. He's still really young, and he's been really the most consistent offensive player for the Heat over the last 4 seasons. That being said, that means you got to look at Strus, you got to look at Gabe, maybe even Duncan as pieces that you got to move to bring in a guy like Damian Lillard. If I'm the Heat, you have the 18th pick this year. You have we have the picks now. You have multiple first rounders that you can give up, second rounders. Plus, do a sign and trade for Gabe, Strus, Yurtseven Highsmith if you have to. I mean, I wouldn't particularly love that because I think we got a lot of young guys, even though they're undrafted, who have potential that could be a part of this core for the time being. Clearly, they've helped us get to this point, right? So there'd be no really a purpose of breaking them up. But we're also, again, talking about a guy like Damian Lillard who is a
That's
generational talent,
purpose right
and it
there.
might
Yeah.
be. And if you don't, if people really thought we had zero chance against the Nuggets and we still took a game away at home from them in Denver. Imagine you bring a guy with this pretty much the same team, plus minus a few guys, with Damian Lillard, and people would really start to say, "Oh, the Heat have a chance. The Heat have a
Yeah.
chance to win the NBA Finals."
Absolutely.
Um, so I'm again sad that the Heat couldn't pull this one away from Denver. But Denver is a good team, and the Heat fought all the way at the end from a place where no one thought they'd be. That second play-in game against Chicago, and they got to the NBA Finals as an 8 seed, the second 8 seed to ever reach the NBA Finals, the first play-in team to ever reach the NBA Finals. And in doing so, they beat the two best teams in the NBA with the two best records and odds to win the NBA Finals,
Mhm.
and the New York Knicks, our biggest rival. And that was probably one of the sweetest series wins of my life. That and the Celtics series, also, both of them. Seeing Bill Simmons' crying face was one of the happiest moments of my life. I know it was for it was sweet.
It's always extra fun, extra sweet when
It's
we get.
always extra fun when you get Boston and New York super fans
Oh
to
yeah,
get a little upset at you.
Spike Lee
But
crying.
yeah, but obviously a great run this postseason. Glad we got to come on and talk about it. Next, Miami Dolphins coming up. Uh,
Super team loading.
Super team loading. Dalvin Cook on the way too, right? So, I'm still convinced that if Tua played in the Heat series, we would have smoked the Nuggets. Also, by the way,
Right. Yeah.
yeah, right. Just him out there, he would have tore up Jokic. Obviously, he's
Yeah.
Jokic.
Right.
But
He probably would have gotten a concussion though. So
hey, stop. He's the best. But football aside, we'll get to that a couple episodes from now, probably as the season starts to turn up. But well, we'll see you again soon. For Zach Roisman, I'm Adam Avin. This has been another episode of Make Your Point. Thanks for watching.